Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Southbank Center and welcome to In the Green Room. My name is Gillian Moore and I'm the Director of Music at Southbank Center. So it's a huge pleasure to welcome truly one of the world's great musicians, the pianist Dame Mitsuko Uchida, who has a long-standing relationship with Southbank Center and is truly an artist of absolutely international significance. And we're very lucky that she calls London her home. When I think of my own personal great experiences in the Royal Festival Hall, in the Southbank Center, my mind goes to concerts such as Mitsuko playing those last great Schubert piano sonatas, this solo performer speaking to an audience of nearly 3,000 people in the most intimate way in this huge space. And she truly is an artist that we treasure. So I just wanted to say to you, welcome, Mitsuko. How are you this evening?
Hi. Well, actually, I get so nervous whenever I have anything to do with computer, and it happened again. And the computer knows that I don't like computers, and they then decide to dislike me. And it is completely off. We all have wasted so far 40 minutes or so just trying to get the thing working. But anyway, I am just with you. I'm very happy to be talking to you and also talking to the audiences. It is so nice because there was so mighty little happening beyond streaming. So I wonder when the last concert was that I really played except in a little church. I cheated at some point in October, I think, but the last official concert was 12th of March or 11th of March in 2020 in Berlin, in the Berlin Saal. And I was apparently the last person to play a recital in Berlin. On the next that day, opera houses were shut, theater was shut, everything was shut. And because Berlin Saal was so small, I was allowed to play. And on the next day, apparently everything was shut. And so since then, few things which were all streamed and hard and not only hardly, no, 4 other countries, yes. For America, yes. For some venues and I even did some for Carnegie Hall and various things streaming, but and I was but never anywhere else but in London.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, what has this been like for you? Because I guess your whole life is about, well, 2 things, traveling around the world and bringing lots of people together, either to perform or to listen to you performing. You can't, neither of those things those are the 2 things that are forbidden to us. I mean, how have you coped with that?
But actually, can I say that? But I actually love not to travel.
Yeah.
I love it to be at home. I love to get up without any purpose. And I get up slowly, and I have low blood pressure, so I'm very slow in the morning. And I would slowly get up and slowly get going. And then, without any pressure to be facing a piece of music, I might be just playing badly from memory something else, or I might be studying something, or I might repeat something that I saw, pieces of music that I so love, and so spend the day is fantastic. Of course, and of course, at a given point, even I felt something was missing, but probably this was most of my colleagues. So I had quite a good time at home, I must say, but I ate very well and so on. And so that time was, but one horrible thing was that every day at the end of the day, I checked Johns Hopkins and I knew what was going on, and this knowledge of it, that you could never actually relax, that this COVID-19 is active and attacking everybody. That was the real horror of that you can't really relax. And that makes you, that created probably a lot of depression in people, I think, rather than not having seen and not having been to a club and then screaming at the top of your head. I mean, that it is not my way anyway, but not to be able to actually relax, that all the time you have got to wash your hands, all the time you are thinking you are not allowed to touch people, you have to keep the distance going, and so on. So that anxiety was actually a serious problem. But compared to some people who lost their loved ones, honestly, my life was really, really good.
And do you feel, you've said, that there's the upside of being able to start slowly, do what you like, play for pleasure. Did you miss that thing of a live audience? Did you miss that feedback, or were you quite content to sort of turn it on yourself and play?
Well, I mean, yeah, mixed. It is mixed. I say, of course, I'm so happy that I can be at home and play badly, and nobody is sitting there to blame you being so stupid or anything. So I would be facing my own stupidity openly all the time, and that's actually kind of a pleasure. And yet, when I stream, when I am on stage streaming a concert, I do want an audience. It makes a big difference, because that silence in an empty hall is so different from the silence where people are there. And you do feel the connection. And that actually makes live concerts really different from recordings and for anything else.
It's funny you say that, because when I said at the beginning that, when I think of my great experiences in the festival hall, particularly, I think of you on your own on that stage, mesmerizing an audience with, for example, the last three Schubert piano sonatas. But it's that thing of all these people silent together and almost breathing together, focusing down on this one solitary figure on the stage. It's just, that's the magic of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is extraordinary, actually, when you are on stage and you are playing towards the last furthest wall of the hall. And you know how far that wall is. But in an odd sort of way, I do have this peculiar love of even open air, particularly when the acoustics are bad and it disappears. I'm playing fabulously quiet pieces, slow and quiet pieces like the B-flat Schubert, the very last sonata to open it is such unbelievable. I can't even say it's joy, it's beyond. Yeah. And then listen to the sound disappear into the faraway land is something so special. So when the hall is large, I don't mind not even I pretend that everybody can hear, and I try to make the hall smaller. And the concert hall actually I can shrink in its size, and I love that activity, I must say.
That's exactly how I feel as an audience member, that feeling that you're playing, you have shrunk the hall and it's an intimate experience. But I mean, I often think of the, I guess, Herculean mental and physical feat of being that lone person on the Royal Festival Hall stage with an acoustic instrument, doing this 2-hour recital or whatever. And how do you prepare yourself mentally and physically for that huge challenge?
Well, mentally, every time is a new challenge, and you have to somehow put yourself into the mindset for that day, and for that, however it is, and what it feels that day, and be quite sure what it is that you have to do. But all together, but what happens is physically, of course, I can't do much because I am I can't play say like many of my colleagues who do 100 concerts, or some do 125, and most of them play 75. I try to play about 50 concerts, and because I can't repeat again and again the concerts, and every concert takes up so much energy. But how do I prepare? On the day I rehearse the entire program, and then I eat a big steak. And that is a must for me. I'm not. If I were a vegetarian, I shall stop being on stage. So I need a steak for lunch, and then I rest for an hour or an hour and a half, and then I get going, and the every hall is different, and even the hall that you seem to know sounds differently every time because of the acoustics, because of the humidity, for example, changes the acoustics, and also the temperature, all sorts of things, and the way you hear that day, you have to be just so honest for that one event. You don't play because I played well yesterday, or because I thought about it 10 days ago, because it sounds good. No, if you go from the silence of the hall, and then the first note you play, that starts it. And it is not but actually it starts with the silence before the first note. And so from there, you are carried. And one hopes very much that actually the music will carry you. And that simply it isn't. But here, these are the wishful thinkings of mine, that's all.
But that's a wonderful thought, that you sort of reinvent it in the moment, how you're going to play. You don't according to how.
Yeah, you have, yes, because you have to follow from the first note that sounds. You have to follow the truth of that note that started it.
Yeah. And
not that note that you seem to think that sounded lovely yesterday. That has nothing to do with who you are that day.
So you're coming back to the Royal Festival Hall on the 10th of June. I'm delighted to say, will that be the first concert that you've done with an audience then for a long time? For
a long time, except for as I said, that one that I cheated in the church somewhere. There was about, I think, 20 people somewhere in October or somewhere like that. But I shall have already in a concert in Bristol with I don't know how many people in St. George's beforehand in May at some point, and I shall play the recite a sort of short recital with Schubert and Promptus.
Mm-hmm. So
so biggish audience. I don't know how many people you can put in the festival hall. Is it half full, something like that?
It's so at that stage, it still has to be under the government roadmap. It still has to be socially distanced. So it will be 1,000 people, and the festival hall, as you know, holds 2,700.
It's as big as that. Okay. Yeah. So, but 1,000 is a lot. That is fantastic. Yeah. And to be able to play to 1,000 people who are alive and sitting there and vibrating with you, wow, that is a real event.
And this is, of course, you're not on your own on the stage in this case. You are with a large orchestra, the Philharmonia, and with the wonderful Esa-Pekka Salonen. It's called the Salonen Finale because sadly Esa-Pekka is finishing his magnificent tenure with the Philharmonia Orchestra as chief conductor and leaving us for San Francisco. And it's you're playing Beethoven, with him. I guess that, you know, having talked a lot about the loneliness of the solo pianist, where you also have very strong connections with musicians around the world. How important is that to you?
Very important. I know every orchestra that I love. I don't think as a unit. I do think of those many people that I love, and I do know some people that, particularly the front row string players are quite close to me, but also wind players, because they are like solo players. You make chamber music with them, and so I do think of different, not just a Philharmonia orchestra as such. Of course, each time the group may differ, the people who are in the group, but I do think of which oboe player will be playing today, or for my concert, or which flute, and so on. So it is. I have lots of connections, good connections to a certain number of really wonderful orchestras in the world, and that I'm very lucky.
So one of those is the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, and
oh yes,
yeah. Spoiler that your secret information, you're going to be coming back with them next season, because this is part of an ongoing project over several years that
yes.
at Southbank we're working on with you, and many of you in the audience here tonight will have attended the concert. It was on the 31st of January last year, which I think is the last one we did. It was the night when Britain left the EU. It was quite a momentous night for this orchestra made up of musicians really from all around Europe. I mean, they're a special hand-picked orchestra that you have a special relationship with, isn't it?
Yes, I do with them, and it is quite interesting, because MCO, Mahler Chamber Orchestra, then I do know everybody. Yeah. It's not only the key players, but I do know everybody who might be in that group or not, and I know the ones who are not playing as well. And it started slowly one day, but suddenly it flared up. And I realized that they would do anything for you when you get going. Yeah. And I was even talking to somebody like George Benjamin. For example, he had written the opera, the original skin for them. And and then he's, I think, as far as I know, he's composing another one for Aix-en-Provence and a Mahler Chamber Orchestra. And we discussed, and he pointed out, yes, when I said, well, many of the faces I know also from other groups, and yet when you meet them in the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, they all perk up differently, and they do play as if there was no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And as if there was absolutely, and suddenly everybody plays like little gods, he said. And I said, I agree, that is what happens. And that, so it is, I don't know what happens, but something happens when we play together. And it is such pure joy playing Mozart, which is in so many ways, it is a mishmash. It is a very mixed, interesting mix. Mozart, every Mozart piece, almost every Mozart piece is a little opera, but particularly the piano concerti, they are like an opera. Each piece is a kind of an opera, whereas the piano solo sonata or sonata for piano and violin, they are much more intimate. And those you can just go and speak and then talk to people. But these concerti he wrote in order to be successful and in order to be known to be a great composer, and which he was, of course. And he wrote many of them in the last 10 years of his life in Vienna. And those are sort of but each piece has got its own story to tell, and it's an opera. And it is such joy to do it with somebody who would share it with you and might even do something that you haven't expected. And then you follow each other.
And when you say they're like an opera, I guess you're talking about that sense of drama that you create,
Yes.
but you're creating it, I guess, not only when you work with the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, you're not just doing it as a solo pianist, but you're actually leading, conducting the orchestra, as of course Mozart would have done himself when the pieces were brand new. Is that something that you developed, that you decided you wanted to do with that orchestra? Is it something? At what point did you decide that you wanted to sort of not work with a conductor for this kind of project and just lead yourself?
Well, actually, it started in the 1980s, early 80s, by chance. I jumped in for a cancellation of Murray Pariah.
Yeah.
And Murray then was doing quite a lot with English Chamber Orchestra. And I was asked, well, Mitsuko plays some Mozart concerti, doesn't she? Can't she just jump in to do a couple of Mozart concerti somewhere? And I said, well, I'm directing. I said, well, I never directed in my life. I have seen, for example, Daniel Barenboim do it, and then, of course, Murray do it. But I have never done it. Mm-hmm. And then they came back and said, why don't you try? And I said, well, why not? And I did it. And it somehow hit it off. I hit off with some number of players. Particularly, I fell in love with Neil Black's playing, the principal oboe. And sadly, he is not with us anymore. But Neil could play notes that you really remember. But he could hold a long note, and it would be so beautiful. He was not somebody who was brilliant. No, he wasn't. But he could play so beautifully. And our eyes met, and we made music together. So that was the start of my directing and playing. And so I did a lot with English Chamber Orchestra and also Scottish Chamber Orchestra for a while in the 80s. And then in the 90s, I stopped because Mozart became too much of a fashion item. And I became a little bit of a fashion item with it. And I thought, no, unless I'm careful, I won't be able to play other people, such as Beethoven. And Beethoven went away, of course. Beethoven is the most different from Mozart playing, from players' point of view. And also the way they think are so opposed to each other. So I couldn't, I mean, physically, it has become an impossibility. So I went through Bartok concerto and Schoenberg concerto back to somehow playing Beethoven and so on. So there was a while that I was not playing much Mozart. And then slowly, I was enticed. And then and I played quite a lot even then with two American orchestras. One was Cleveland, with whom I have done complete Mozart concerti over 5 years. And then also I played, interestingly, and in many people's eyes, with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And Chicago is not known for much known for Mozart. They're much rather more romantic music, and then with fantastic voluptuous sound, and you name it. And somebody told me, and when I heard that you are directing Chicago Symphony with a Mozart concerto, I thought they are going to eat you before breakfast. and did they? No. I was telling them, I would like the sound to be this, I want it to be that, and that it should be lighter, and this should sound like an upbow, and God knows. And they did it all with me. They didn't complain, and so we got on extremely well. So those two Americans were the only symphony orchestras that I have worked on Mozart seriously with. And then somehow Mahler Chamber came towards me at some point, and we tried And then we realized, or I realized, that it is something so special that that we clicked. So it was.
Well, it's a great project that you're bringing to us with all the Mozart and touring all round, but with the Mozart piano concertos and new music in the concert as well, or 20th century,
Yes.
20th and 21st
Yes.
century music. It's very
Yes.
exciting project.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Yeah, I know.
And this thing about you said about the Mozart, these concertos being written in Vienna, and I just want to go back for a moment to your Viennese background, because you lived in Vienna as a child, and well, you grew up in Vienna, and you were surrounded, I guess. But I mean, how did the piano start? How did the music start? And this love for this Viennese music, which is one of the key things that you're so known for, I guess.
Well, my start as a piano player was early but slow. I was 3 in Japan, and I started playing according to my mother. I don't remember, of course, but my mother told me when I am the baby of the family. My sister, who is much older, and then my brother, who was 2 years older than me, and the piano teacher wanted to teach my brother together with her son. So those were the days that boys never played the piano. This was a girly thing to do, like the flower arrangement and that sort of. Then you also plinky plonks on the piano, and so that was good for the girls to find a husband. So that was a story. So my brother started having piano lessons, and apparently my mother couldn't leave me alone, so she was carrying me on her arm. And then one day the piano teacher said, "But I think that baby that you are bringing is more interested than your son or my son. So I want to teach her as well." So I started. But then it was Japan, and I hardly heard any serious music. Well, we had some recordings, but primarily that ones that we listened to, the children listened, were vocal music. And some of them were, we didn't even know that there was a Franz Schubert. All right. And so when I was something like 13 and in Vienna, I heard the Winterreiter for the first time. And then suddenly the little song that we used to sing, Am Brunnen vor dem Tore, was out of the Lindenbaum from the Winterreiter, and so on. So music came very, very slowly and sporadically, and it was quite different from some friends of mine who at the age of 5 heard the Mozart clarinet quintet and cried. I didn't even know there was a clarinet quintet. I never heard of such a word until I was over 12, 13, 14, and until I was in Vienna.
Mm-hmm. So you moved to Vienna, and then is that when it became very serious? Is that when you were able to study?
Yes, up to a point, yes, but then it became totally serious at the age of 16. I came back to Vienna when parents went away, and at that point I thought I better try to be between 12 and 16. I said to myself, I behaved as if I was a professional. And I didn't know what it meant to be a musician, but as I spent those years really working so hard, although I had no idea about music, but why don't I give it a go? And that at that point I was 16, and I never looked back. That's it. And I'm still that. I am still giving it a go. The next time I play might be a not better, but different.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting thing. Do you feel, it sounds like you feel you're still, I mean, it's a wonderful thing about life, isn't it? Still learning all the time, still.
Oh yes, I mean, nothing happened very much. So in a way, I'm learning and learning. And so I am basically a terribly old age student.
You just going back to when you're so it became very serious at 16, etc. So and how did the UK come into your story? You were involved.
Well, at a given point, I was 21, 22. I wanted to stay in Europe. I knew that I was not going back to Japan. Parents were out there, but I thought about several options, but I felt I belonged to Europe. And I didn't want to go to Germany. It was far too close to Vienna. I wanted to get out of Vienna. I have lived there, and Vienna is a place where everybody knows about Mozart, and everybody knows how to play Mozart, and everybody knows how to play Schubert, and everybody knows Beethoven as well. And I mean, our great grandfather was in the cafe with Franz Schubert, and then he was eating a Kipferl. So everybody knew how it was being played, and they knew. So I thought, as I don't know anything, I have to go to somewhere where it was more open. And Germany, I felt in Germany also people knew that Beethoven was a German, and Johann Sebastian Bach, of course, that Bach is there, and so on. So I came to, and France would have known everything about French composers. So I came to England, which was much more open, and that was more of a no man's land in terms of music. And it was open also in the times of Handel came, Haydn flourished, and even Mozart would have wanted to have come to visit London, and. So I thought, well, I try to go to London. And so it was. And I came here and I stayed.
Well, it's very lucky for us. Thank you so much, Mitsuko, and thank you so much for dealing with the technological hiccups. It's been a wonderful experience talking to you. It's been an extraordinary insight into Mitsuko's imagination into her world. You will have an opportunity to hear her live on the 10th of June, and we'll be announcing some concerts which you've heard hinted about. Do tune into further Green Room events. I think next up we have Michael Rosen, we have the Canny-Masons, Isata and Sheiko Canny-Mason, and we have Nicola Benedetti talking to Tolkstada, our new head of classical music. So thank you everybody, and have a very good evening.